Paul, how did you get started in filmmaking?
I think I was born with a camera in my hand. I don't remember ever not wanting to make movies. But the thing that was interesting was when I was little, I thought the actors kind of made it up as they went along. So I wanted to be an actor. And then as I got older, two things happened. One, I realized I sucked at acting. But two, I began to learn, oh, there's a writer and a director and there's people behind the camera. And to me, that became more interesting. I'd rather tell the story than tell somebody else's story through my performance, whatever it is. I found that was much more where I was geared to. So when I was 11, I started directing movies.
But when you were 10, I understand something very fascinating happened.
When I was 10, I auditioned for the lead role of Danny in The Shining. They were casting out of Denver, where I lived, because Kubrick, the film takes place in Denver, or in Colorado, better cast out of Denver. So kids could send in a headshot. So I sent in a headshot, and I got an audition. So I met with Jen Harlan in a hotel, and proceeded to bomb an audition for Kubrick. And I can proudly say that I've been rejected by Stanley Kubrick. If you're going to get rejected by the best. But that's what happened.
So going back to that experience, now that you cast people, is there anything that you take from that, or no, that was just a 10-year-old going on a cool vacation with his parents?
Well, no, I think the casting for The Shining, vacation, it was just literally down to like the hotel downtown.
Ah, okay, you didn't come to LA, I see.
For The Shining, they were casting kids who weren't necessarily actors. So there wasn't really like read this page. I knew it was a horror movie. My mom knew Stephen King's work, and then she read the book because the audition was coming. And they knew who Kubrick was. Like, oh, this is gonna be a really spooky movie. I didn't know the story exactly, but I knew it was a haunted house thing and a scary hotel. And I was a total scaredy cat as a kid, always hiding under the covers from The Blob or whatever. And I was worried that if they knew I was easily scared, that they wouldn't cast me because they wouldn't want to work with somebody. Not realizing, of course, that there's 1,000 people around and lights in your face, and thinking, oh, they're gonna shove me in a dark room and I'm gonna get scared. They're not gonna want to work with somebody who gets scared, who can't just pretend to be scared, but is actually scared. So I went into thinking to myself, I'm not gonna get scared. No matter what they do, I'm gonna put on a brave face. So the guy started by asking me, what scares you? Trying to get a fear reaction out of me because I'm a kid. And I'm thinking, I'm not gonna get scared no matter what. Nothing scares me. Nothing scares me. He's like, oh, come on. What scared you? Well, maybe sudden movements. And he kicks over a chair. And I don't jump, and he goes, you're bullshitting me. And I'm like, well, no. I mean, I'm totally talked myself out of a job. If I just been the scared little kid that I really was, instead of trying to act brave, I might have had a shot, but no. When I audition actors, I tend to work with actors, so I don't need to play tricks with them. I just sit on the sides and tell them the part, and they come in and they give me their take on it. So they act. I don't know what I was doing.
So when you were 11, talk about your filmmaking rise from that point. What did you...
My meteoric rise? When I was 11, I just started, at some point around 10 or 11, I realized that there were these people called directors and writers that really did the stuff. I think my parents were big into Hitchcock and Kubrick, and they would watch these documentaries about them on our PBS station, and Spielberg sort of entered the national consciousness around that time. It was right before Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so there were all these things, this director, young kid director who's got all these, the biggest movies of all time, Jaws and Close Encounters are his. Now he's working with George Lucas, the other big guy. And so there's all this awareness. And I think at that point I started thinking, oh, well, obviously they do all the stuff. They come up with the story and they create the feel and work with the actors and do these things. And so I remember picking up a camera, and we already had the Super 8 camera. My parents had been putting me in some movies that I acted in. Horrible stuff. I picked it up and I started learning how to make movies. And my parents didn't educate me. It was complete ground up education. Like I would see Spielberg movies and I'd see these great dolly in to face shots. I'm like, I want to do that. I didn't realize they were moving the camera. I thought they were just zooming in. So I tried zooming and I could never get the zoom to look right. And one day I moved the camera forward, and then when I looked at the footage, I was like, oh, well, that's the move. So literally learning, if you look at my early stuff, it's almost like the evolution of silent cinema. Like it's all wide shots and silent. And then we very slowly begin to discover the medium shot and the close-up and editing and moving the camera. And then my parents bought me a sound camera when I was 16, so suddenly there was sound. And it was almost like the history of cinema replayed through this stupid kid. So I learned everything, ground up.
Paul, whether one is a new filmmaker or more seasoned, what would you advise in terms of the best practices for submitting to film festivals? What are some of your sort of quick and dirty little cheat sheet cliff notes that you would give someone?
Well, they're different for seasoned filmmakers versus new filmmakers. If you've been on the circuit before, it's far easier to navigate the circuit. I think with our first film that we did on the circuit, 10 Till Noon, we spent like $3,000 in submission fees. Flash forward to Favor, which is the third film I've had on the circuit, I think we spent like $300 in submission fees. Like when you're an unknown commodity, you go out, you have to pay full fees, and to everybody. But when you've been around the circuit before and you've played at other festivals, you can always write to them, ask for waivers. They don't always give them to you, but often they do, or at least a discount. And the Austin Film Festival, once you've played there, you get a $25 to submit, again, late, early, whatever. It's a flat fee. That's a huge savings. I think their late fee's like $100, something like that. With Favor, Blaine Weaver, my actor, had been in the Austin Film Festival before, so I was able to get that alumni fee. So you can save a lot of money that way. So that's different. Once you played it before, you have an advantage. You're known. You can get around the entries. But even if you're a first-time filmmaker, a couple things you should do. One, submit early. Submitting late is always more expensive, and your odds of getting in are far lower. They start programming right away, so you want to get in the door. If you submit early and they like your film, they're going to mentally put you on the schedule. If you submit late and they like your film, they have to like your film better than something else they've already mentally put on the schedule. So you go in early, you're not being graded on a curve. You go in late, you are. It's just the way it is. But also the submission fee differences between early and late are astounding. Like, I think average fee early is like $50, average fee late fee is $100. I mean, that's crazy. So submit early, and then be wise about where you submit. I think that if you have a $5,000 feature with no stars and you have no connection to the Sundance Film Festival, don't submit to the Sundance Film Festival. It makes no sense. And don't be like, well, you never know. No, you know. You do know. You're not getting in, especially if you submit late, because their program's set in mid-July. All this. Most of the submissions come in September, whenever everybody's rushing to get it under the wire. You have no chance. The schedule is set. You're literally $125 to pay for Lawrence Fishburne's hotel room. That's literally what you're doing, out of the goodness of your heart, and you're sending him a coaster of your movie for their cold drinks. That's basically about it. So be wise and do your homework. A good thing to do is, if you're thinking of submitting to a festival, and I know there's a lot of legwork, but what you do is go to the website of that festival and look at the previous year's program. If they're playing nothing but Cuban American films, as the Miami Film Festival does, and your film takes place in Saskatchewan, don't submit there. Maybe you should submit to the Fort Lauderdale Film Festival, which is a wider program. Some programs have certain specific directors or tastes. If you've made a mumblecore film, don't submit to Fantastic Fest. Just be wise. Your good batting average for getting into festivals is about 25%. That's pretty strong. So for a first filmmaker. So if you wanted to get to 10 film festivals, you had to submit to 40. Submit early. And don't be afraid to write for waivers if you know somebody or know somebody who knows somebody. You never know.
So let's go back to that first-time filmmaker, because it sounds like a lot of research should really be put in. Did you make like a spreadsheet document? Were you that organized where you tracked?
I wish we were that organized. We blundered into it. That was the whole point behind making Official Rejection, was that hopefully filmmakers would come in a little bit wiser. We kind of blundered. We kind of went, blah! Like, we'll start with Sundance late, and then we'll scattershot. And now a little more organized about it. I think a good rule of thumb is don't rush to finish your film. Finish it when it needs to be finished. Don't send an unfinished movie because you just know they'll see the spirit of it and know it's going to be good when the cut's done and the mix is done. They're looking for any reason to reject your movie. Think about when you were casting your film and you got stacks and stacks of headshots. You have one part, you maybe want to read 20 people for the part, you got 400 headshots. You're looking for any reason to get rid of these people. Anything that you can do to get someone off the pile. And programmers are not that different. If your film isn't finished or the cut's not quite right yet, that's a really good reason for them to toss it aside. And again, unless you know somebody and they're going to give you that extra grain of salt, that extra little bit of attention, there's no point in doing that early. So wait till the film's finished, send it in then, and look at the schedule and say, what's the next, if you're going to apply to major film festivals, what's the next 2 major film festivals that are coming up that I can submit early to? There's Toronto, South by Southwest, Sundance, Slamdance, LA, South by. That's really it. Did I start with South by? I don't know. I may have repeated South by in that list. But those are the ones. So if you finish your film in December, well, it's too late for Sundance and Slamdance, and maybe even too late for South by. So maybe start with LA Film Festival and then Toronto. And those are your next 2. And then anything after those 2, if those 2 don't accept you, you're not going to get into any major film festivals. They're all pretty much the same. So, or Tribeca in May. Yeah. So go ahead and after that point, start looking at regional film festivals that you've heard are good. And you want to know about film festivals, ask a filmmaker. Even filmmakers that you don't know, if they're not famous major filmmakers, they'll be happy to write back to you. I actually wrote a blog because I kept getting asked what my favorite film festivals were, just listing, here are my favorite festivals, here's why they are my favorite festivals, and they were regional festivals. They weren't like major ones. They were ones that indie filmmakers have a reasonable shot at getting into if their film is decent. I wrote that blog so I could send it around, and people would say, "Hey, what's your favorite?" I go, "Here's a list. Phoenix, Dead Center, Napa." And there's a whole bunch of festivals that that if you are outside the system and you don't have major stars in your movie and you made your film for $20,000, $30,000, if they like it, they'll still play it. You're not You're not competing against Robert De Niro.
What's the URL for that blog?
It's Just Shut Up and Shoot.
Nice.
Is my blog. So.
Let's talk about the more seasoned filmmaker. What are some of the politics and etiquette that one should abide by when going and asking for a fee being waived or a lesser fee?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm actually really a pussy about it. What I do is, I think a really smart thing to do, and this is just in general, is just be a nice person and be cooperative and be grateful when you get into a film festival and be friendly with the staff. Film festival staff aren't that different than indie filmmakers. They're just trying to put on a show and do their, that's it. I mean, then you're the same thing you're doing. So I find a lot of common ground with that. So, you've been cast in their festival. Be cool. Don't be a dick. Go down there, shake their hand, buy them a drink, ask how you can help, and let that help extend past the end of the festival. Make friends with them on Facebook, get their email address, and then when your new film is ready, say, hey, I just want my new film's just completed, and we're looking at the schedule, and we'd love to be able to play your festival again. Blah blah blah. We're going to be submitting. They'll say, yeah, don't pay a fee. Whatever you do, here's a waiver fee. Often they'll ask. Sometimes, so I'll do that, and almost always they'll offer. If they don't offer, then I might say, well, if possible, we can get maybe a discount, and then they'll go, oh yeah, you can get a waiver, and blah blah blah. Or some will say discount. Blaine Weaver, I know, outright asks because he CC'd me on the emails to Austin. Can we get a fee waiver? I'm much more of a scaredy cat about it. And actually, if I wasn't friendly with the staff. We played, for example, Official Rejection played the Waterfront Film Festival, which I'd heard great things about, but it was scheduled the exact same weekend as the Dead Center Film Festival, which I'd already committed to going to. So I didn't get to go to Waterfront. I felt terrible. We played both festivals, but no one was at Waterfront, and I was at Dead Center. When Favor came around, I'm like, well, I'm submitting to Waterfront again, because again, I've heard good things. Submitted to Waterfront, but I couldn't just write to them and go, hey, can I get a waiver? Because I didn't show up the last time. I mean, I told them I wasn't showing up. It wasn't a surprise, but I didn't go. So I paid the full fee. And then we got in, and I did go this time. And they were like, you're so cool for paying the fee. Like, we respected you so much more for paying the fee because, you didn't have to. You could have got a waiver. I'm like, well, I didn't feel like I could ask that of you. But, so.
So let's suppose you've been selected to be in 7 different festivals, some of which you may be able to attend, some of which you will not be able to go to. What are some of the things you should start doing, even if you can't go to them, a filmmaker should start doing to grease those wheels, let them know, knowing you may want to come back in a couple years, things like that?
Okay, well, definitely what you want to do when you get into a film festival is, again, just be cool. and be conscious of the schedule. You have to make a delivery to them. So you have to make, so the first thing you do is, they'll tell you you're in first. And then a day later you'll get an email and they'll say, please accept this invitation. They want to know you're in, you accept it. Then you'll get an email from them with all their information, like, thank you, congratulations, you've been accepted. They'll tell you like when it is, what they provide in terms of airfare, hotel, if anything. About half do provide something. Then talk about when materials are due, what the materials are, what you're screening on. So really you want to think about, right away you want to kind of put together a schedule, whereas we have to have our master to them by this date, and they need this kind of master. Do they need DCP? Do they need Blu-ray, HD cam, MOV file, whatever it is? You want to make sure you have that in your mind. And then you also, it's an automatic thing where you want to create your bonus materials. You go, okay, well we need to have posters, and we need postcards and so forth. And then you want to think about whether or not you're going to go. And if they're paying for airfare and hotel, it's way easier to decide. But if it's at the same time as another festival, we had a case where we had 3 at once, like twice on the favor circuit. So at that point, you say, well, who's going to go? Are my actors going to go without me? And you do have, if you have, like on favor, we have 2 solid lead actors. I mean, the film is the 2 of them, pretty much for the entire running time. They're the 2 leads, the 2 character piece. So, and they were both involved from even before we started shooting, during the writing process. So it's easy for me to say, okay, Patrick Day, you're going to go to this festival. Blaine Weaver, you're going to go to this festival. I'm going to go to this festival. We'll divide and conquer. And every single festival gets some sort of good representation of the movie. They get someone who knows the whole film. The actor is less involved with the behind the scenes, as obviously the writer, director, editor is, but they were there and they're on camera, and that's way cool for an audience to see the actor they just saw on screen do a Q&A. So figure out who's going to go, and if you can get there, get there. With favor, it was only one festival this run no one was able to get to, which is pretty cool. I think with official it was about 40% we couldn't get anybody there. It just happens, you just can't afford to get it this time, or there's conflict with something else. But with this, we were very fortunate because we had 3 people we could divide up and send different ways. So that's the first thing you do, is start thinking about the deadlines, and it's work. And also, I always say, write to them, ask them, acknowledge everything. Great, thank you. So be concise, but acknowledge it. Thank you so much. We'll have all the materials to you. If there's anything else you can do, let me know. If you have any special things you can ask for, or offer rather, so anything special things you can offer, like if you have, we have, this special giveaway T-shirt package, or let them know about that right away and see if they can use it. If you're going to go to the festival, also write to them and volunteer. Well, happy to do panels or whatever you need me to do, so that you're contributing to their show. Part of being grateful. So.
And on the rare instance that you can't make it, life gets in the way, finances get in the way.
Right.
Finances, again, get in the way. What should you do maybe social media wise, or what can you do, virtually that could maybe make up for some of that?
Well, whether you're there or not, you should do as much social media as possible. Mm-hmm. First of all, find the festival's Twitter handle, Facebook handles, like them, follow them. Usually they'll follow you back, or they'll find you as well. Then if you have a website, have a schedule, a screening schedule, add a ticket link when it becomes live to their screening, date, time, everything else. Everything you would put on your postcard, you can put on your website, including the link, which, unlike a postcard, is actually clickable. Have that updated all the time. And you should always do social, but you should do it whether you're there or not. I mean, it doesn't really change it. It's more effective if you're there. Even so, if you know 3 people that live in Delaware and you're in the Delaware Film Festival, the odds of them showing up to your screening are hundreds of times higher if you're actually going to be there to have a drink with afterwards. If you're not there, it's difficult for the festival. The festival's position is, anybody can go see the new Tom Cruise movie anytime. It's playing 35 shows a week on every other screen all throughout the city. But if you want to see such and such, you got to come this one time to this one screening, or maybe 2 times if you're playing twice in a festival. But this is you're not going to see this anywhere else. This is new and exclusive and interesting and different. And any added value you can add on to that event aspect really helps the festival. So you being there in person is a big deal. I mean, especially in festivals that aren't taking place in Los Angeles or New York, where it isn't as common for filmmakers to just fall out of the sky and talk about their film. It's a big deal. I think it's a big deal for you as a filmmaker to see your film with an audience. I don't watch the movie. I watch the audience watch the movie. You learn a lot, and you learn a lot from people talking about your film and the questions they ask, and they're more likely to remember you when they leave. Because remember, festivals is all about audience building. Creating a brand for your movie, getting it out there in front of audiences so that they remember you when VOD or DVD happens down the line.
Do you see a lot of filmmakers doing those things that you've outlined? I mean, they're all amazing tips, and I think that, this is cliche, but a recipe for success. There we go. Okay. So, but do you see a lot of people doing that?
I do see a lot of filmmakers doing that. You meet the same people on the circuit over and over and over. I think, filmmakers in general, when you've worked for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years on your movie, you're pretty proud of it, or at least you're pretty proud of the accomplishment, or you want to talk about it. It's like, you want to go and blather about your stuff. And so getting in front of an audience where they're going to talk about nothing but your movie is pretty gratifying. Even with the occasional oddball that goes off on a tangent about something else in the audience, which does happen periodically, but even then, just getting out there and glad handing. Some people don't like it though. Some people do. I know they're shy, or they're reclusive, or they don't want to talk about it, or they don't feel comfortable doing it. But it is part of the job. It's what I like to call the politician of the politician role of the filmmaker, where you have to go out. Yeah, you go out, you glad hand, you kiss babies and do all those things, and you got to keep a straight face during Q&A sometimes. I know with Official Rejection, we screened in San Diego, and the very first screening we had, the very first question of the Q&A, I opened it up. Does anybody have any questions? And this guy in the front row went, "It's too long." Like that. And his wife just went, and I kind of just went, "Well, sir, not really a question, but thank you. Anybody else?" You have to kind of smile and move on from there without getting mad or attacking your audience or whatever else.
Right. Heckling back. Yeah.
Heckling back. You can't. Yeah, you got to be cool. You got to be cool. You got to respect their opinion. "I didn't like your movie." Okay. Doesn't happen. Actually, usually if they don't like it, they're going to leave. I've had someone with Official Rejection. So we got in Denver. Someone came up to us, a filmmaker who had, I guess, programmed for Sundance, who was kind of offended by the movie. Don't argue with him. Just okay, hear him out. That's hard to do sometimes, but being a politician is important for audience building. It's important for network building. Again, if you want to be on the circuit a second, third, fourth time and not spend thousands and thousands of dollars getting your film out there, going out and glad handing and bring the staff pizza. Like, the staff is working their asses off in that office. They haven't seen daylight for weeks, and when they do, it's someone wanting something from them, some filmmaker wanting to know why the screening was 2 minutes late or something like that. So at Denver Stars, we brought them a bunch of pies.
Oh, nice.
And they were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you brought us pies." And then I asked for a fee waiver.
What flavor were they? They weren't rhubarb, were they?
Pizzas, sorry.
Oh, I see.
Pizzas.
Oh, I thought you
No,
meant
our Vatavilla pizza in Denver. Best pizza in the city. Better than Bojo's. We brought them stacks of those, and they were very happy.
Going back to being the politician analogy, which I think is just brilliant. So many filmmakers sometimes seem like they get a little nervous being in front of the crowd, whereas the actors love it. And I know there will be people in groups, if you ever watch the Jerry Springer show or whatever, they love to test that person in the hot seat, and they like to kind of see the reaction. So sometimes people stand up and, "Curious why you did this." Bam, silence, you're on. So how would you advise the more shy, reclusive auteur to handle that situation? Because it inevitably will happen.
It does. You have to. You have to man up in those situations, and you have to sort of. You have to just be kind and remember things from their point of view. I mean, you start attacking the audience, it's not cool. No one in the audience, even your allies, the audience, are like, "Oh man, he's being it." We had a thing at the Q&A for Favor, the very first world premiere. It was a really good Q&A, but we had one guy in the audience who started talking about Mad Men, because in Favor, Blaine Weaver's character works for an ad agency, and I had worked in advertising, and those creative pits. I mean, there's the nice boardroom, everybody gets dressed up and meets with clients, but for the most part, they're these scruffy little hole dens with desks covered in papers and bits of product and and just notes and cartoons and just weird stuff. And everybody's like, got their sleeves rolled up and they're not bouncing a ball against the wall. It's a very messy, kind of low rent environment. So in the film, we shot it that way. I mean, part of it was because we couldn't afford, big ass offices, but we shot it the way I know it, which is a scruffy little, work pit. And the guy, this older gentleman from the audience started going, well, he goes, it went on for several minutes. He goes, seeing this low rent, scuzzy ad agency in this film makes me wonder why you chose to do that. Because most of us are used to seeing what ad agencies look like on AMC's Mad Men, new season of which is debuting in June 5th or something like that. He goes, those rooms are pristine. I'm just seeing these scuzzy, scumbag, Skid Row looking. He went on and finally, and he kept saying AMC's Mad Men. And I finally said, do you work for AMC? I said, well, yeah, I worked in advertising. This is what I'm used to. I know that I'm sorry, the reality of your 1960s soap opera doesn't quite add up to, this. This is not AMC's Mad Men. There's no Don Draper in it. Yeah, that guy's he said he called Blaine Weaver no Don Draper.
Oh, wow.
So we're just kind of like, well, it's a good show. It's a great, you just kind of you kind of justify your choice, and the guys agree. You say, well, hey, that's a great show, and you kind of find something in his opinion or that person's opinion I can see why you would say that, or I see your point of view. Right. Step into their shoes for a moment and sort of see it from there, or at least say you can. And I think often, if someone does have an axe to grind, which again does not happen very often, but if someone does have an axe to grind, they're confused about something in the film. And they see something either negative or murky, hearing them out and not belittling them, treating them like they're stupid, or just treating them with respect, regardless of what they're saying, I think they come away feeling better about it. I was heard. And so they're going to still leave your screening happy and satisfied. Well, movie was okay, but I like the guy. Or maybe they'll go, yeah, that movie was pretty good. Yeah, there's one thing that I wish had been different. It wasn't what I was expecting, but they come away feeling better. One of the worst Q&As I felt so bad was for a film called Coffee Kill Boss, which was the opening night film in Austin last year. And I know a couple of the cast members, and the movie's not confusing at all. It's a comedy, and it's not confusing what happens in the film. And I don't know why this happened, but at the Q&A, someone in the audience said, so who was the killer? And it was super, it was revealed. It was a major reveal who the killer was. You're the killer. It was super obvious. And the director goes, it was so-and-so? So-and-so was the killer? Well, wait, who was, I thought so-and-so was the killer. And someone who obviously wasn't the killer. No, it was so-and-so. Well, did so-and-so survive? Well, we saw them dead in that scene with the knife. And so that, it went on 7 or 8 questions deep of people asking him story points that were painfully obvious. And I saw him afterwards and I said, don't worry. The film's not confusing at all. I don't know why you had this run of people who didn't follow the movie, but I can't imagine why anybody would be confused. You didn't make a confusing film. Because for him, it must have been oh my God, what have I done? No one can follow this movie,
Well, sometimes there's public contrarians that like to kind of be the one that stands up.
Yes.
Whether it's in a classroom or a work. They love to, and I think the way to diffuse those people is agree with everything they're saying. Because that actually diffuses
a little bit
their whole purpose.
I think you shouldn't keep in mind you are in front of an audience when this is happening. It's not a one-to-one. If they come up to you afterwards, you still be respectful. But when you're in front of a lot of other people, you do have to it's Obama at a town hall meeting. You got to take down that one really conservative Tea Party person that says, "Well, I don't like this," and you got to kind of go, "Well, actually, I understand your point of view. I understand this, but you have to kind of diffuse it." But what I find often happens. Almost always happens is, again, your Q&A is your barometer of how the audience has reacted. So if you lose most people for your Q&A, and there's no reason to, it's not your screening's running late or there's something else happening that they have to get to, normally, if you lose most of your audience, it's because they didn't like the film. If you lose half your audience, you divided the audience. I mean, half liked it, half didn't like it, and it's a cult film. But people that stay want to stay because they enjoyed the movie and they want to talk to you and find out something about it. If you didn't like a film, you don't want to know about it. So almost everybody in your audience that stays is on your side. With Favor, we had really good retention. Thank God, we had like 90, 95% people would stick around for the Q&A. So we were doing pretty well. And that said, most Q&As, most of the people were almost every Q&A, everybody's cool. Because again, they all like the movie. But every once in a while, every 5 or 6 Q&As is that one detractor stands up. And universally, almost every time, you don't have to do anything. Because the other audience members will jump on him. What do you mean? You know, like, oh, I thought it was too long. It was a perfect length. What was too long? What would you cut out? What would you cut out? Like, it was, you know, like there's always that way. They stand up and sort of defend you. You know, it's sort of interesting. And again, so it makes it way easier to be like the cool guy in the room.
Right.
Because they don't have to prove anything to anybody. your angry mob of fans does, you know, they don't have to make friends with this guy, but you still kind of want to. Not everybody's gonna like your movie. You know, it's just the way it is. You can't. There's nothing wrong with someone who doesn't like your film, and it's just not their cup of tea, whatever it is. So you have to be prepared for that and respectful of it, and hear them out. Sometimes you'll learn more from those that didn't like you than those that did.
Paul, I want you to imagine that you are a coach in a room full of young indie filmmakers who are fed up and they're ready to call it quits. Okay? And so it's your job to deliver a halftime speech
Oh my
to
God.
them that will forever shape these indelible minds, their filmmaking careers and these young,
You didn't ask Gary King this question.
unstable minds. And I want you to be as animated and as full of life as you need to be.
Oh my God.
So you are rising these guys
You
up.
want me to win one? You want my Gipper speech?
There you go. Super Bowl was yesterday.
Yeah, and Denver lost. That was my
Well,
team.
but see, here you are.
Denver.
Imagine, you know,
Get your head out of your asses, boys! Like
there you go. So you know,
Well, I say that, you know, remember why you got into this. Did you get into this for the glory? Did you do this to make money? If you get into filmmaking to make money, you're the stupidest asshole ever, because filmmaking is the worst, most inconsistent way to make money. You got into this thing to make movies. It is a privilege to make movies. Why do we make movies? Because we love making movies. That's what Quentin Tarantino says in his sets. When things are hard and they're moving stuff around, they go, what do we love? We love making movies. You know, here's something. I was on 10 Till Noon. We had an actor that was a problem, another actor that couldn't remember their lines. We were over budget. The DP was way too slow. We were going to have add days to the schedule. We didn't know where the money was going to come from. Our first AD was all over the map. We're going to have to fire him and replace him mid-shoot. And I came home and I was unloading all this stuff on my ex-wife, my wife at the time, my ex-wife now, unloading all this stuff, and she goes, enjoy this. I go, what do you mean? She's like, when's the next time you're going to have the privilege of having these problems? Enjoy this. You have a film you can't get into festivals? Let's look at that sentence. You have a film. You made a film. Do something with it. Make the next film. Take what you're going to go to the next one. You make movies because you like making movies. If there's any other reward in it, don't do it. If you don't like making films, if you're not compelled to make films, don't make films. If you are, do that and enjoy doing that. And thank goodness for digital technology and the 5D and iPhones and Rode mics and Final Cut Pro and Final Cut X and whatever else, because you can do them. Anybody can make a film now. It's like owning a typewriter or being a novelist. You want to write novels? Write novels. Published or not. You want to make films? Stop worrying about the festival. Stop worrying about the industry. Worst thing ever for art. And just make movies. There's your Gipper speech.
Paul, what do you consider the minimum cost a filmmaker should spend on their festival run, and will do seasoned versus beginner?
What's the minimum cost? I don't know that there is a minimum cost. I mean, it's possible to spend nothing. I think you want to think of it more in terms of how many festivals do you want to play. I think is more an idea. I think you want to play, if you really want to play 10 to 15 festivals if you can, over the course of a year to 16 months. So I think as you get close to finishing your movie, I think you want to look at, okay, we think we'll be done by May. So we can, it's maybe kind of too late to submit, definitely too late to submit to Tribeca or LA, probably too late to submit to Toronto. So maybe we do try an early submission to Sundance and Slam. If it's if you're first time filmmaker, Slamdance, because Slamdance only takes first time filmmakers into their competition category. But okay, we're going to submit to those two. After that, we'll submit to regional festivals, that we can submit to reasonably far enough in advance that we're getting early submission fees and we have a better chance of getting in. And then you start looking at the schedule and again, talk to a filmmaker, find which ones you want to hit. But I think you want to try to get into 10 to 15, which means applying to 40 to 60 festivals, but applying early where it's like $35, whatever is more advantageous. And do it slowly. Don't do it all at once, because festivals, first of all, a lot of festivals aren't open yet, but also as you start to play, once you start to play, you start getting invited to other places. Oh, I heard about your film and we want to submit you to this festival. Or, there's a programmer at Waterfront that saw our film, liked it, and recommended it to several other festivals. So we'd been submitted to 4 or 5 other festivals for free because she heard of it. So, I think do it slowly, roll out slowly, and dip your toe in the water a little bit, because if you've done 10 submissions and you haven't gotten into anything, and they're not, and you've gotten some smaller festivals and there's some regional festivals in there, and no one's biting, then you might want to take a look at your movie. It may not be 4 festivals, but this, again, like, do your research. There's festivals for everything. If your film's, if it's reasonably well made, regardless of what it is, you should be able to get some decent festival play, because most films aren't reasonably well made. That's really the trick is they say, there's 10,000 features made a year, but only, 1,000 are watchable in any way. Only 1,000 have real actors, or, it's a much smaller pool. So there's a place for you. It's funny, like it's genre dependent too. Like I've learned that comedies have an easier time getting programmed than dramas, and that romantic comedies have an easier time than that, because festivals have to program a certain amount of lighter material for older audiences. I mean, older audiences come in and they want to see, things that are different. They don't want to see blockbusters. They want to harken back to a time when movies didn't suck so bad, the Hollywood ones. But they also are, relatively conservatives. They occasionally want to see a love story rather than all the dark, dirgeful stuff that most filmmakers, like myself, tend to pour out. So very often than not, I'll see a romantic comedy, and I've seen some good ones. I have, but often I'll go to a festival, I'll see a romantic comedy, and I'll go, that wasn't so good. Oh, because it's a romantic comedy. They had to program 2, and they only found one that they liked. So the other one is kind of just in there. But yeah, there's a place for everything. So that's really, there's no minimum. I mean, you can get waivers and you can get recommendations. There's no reason you can't spend 0, but you want to make sure your throw is big enough that you take advantage of the circuit, that you're able to play a good smattering around the country. Because when you do go to VOD, DVD, whether you do it through Gravitas Pictures, Film Buffer by yourself, you want your film to have access to an audience. Favor will have played 12 film festivals on its film festival run, and we have one more coming up. And we have, I think it's an average of 30,000 attendees per festival. That's the average. So that's 360,000 people that have been exposed to our advertising material thanks to these non-Sundance festivals, these regional festivals, and they're all over the country. So that's a pretty good throw. And when we come out on VOD in April 1st, we come out on VOD, I'm going to be writing every one of those festivals saying, hey, can you go on Twitter and tweet about us? Can you, do you have a newsletter? Can you put us in your newsletter? Can you send an email blast out to your email people? Can you, to your mailing list? Can you put us in the news items on your webpage? And festivals, even though the festival only runs part of the year, they're operating year-round. They want to stay relevant year-round. So some own their own theaters, some do screenings and fundraisers throughout the year. Some have mini offshoot versions of themselves, like we have the horror one in October. But they want to stay relevant, and your success is their success. You're forever an alumni of that festival. So, hey, we're the Dead Center Film Festival. This film we played is doing well. Well, that reflects well on them. And the people that they're sending that blast to, saying they're on VOD, have been exposed to the programs and Festival Genius and all the things that happened when we did play there last summer. So even if they didn't see the film, there's some brand awareness. That's important. So moving forward, I think you definitely want to have, if you're going to do festivals, a big enough chunk. And that's really what you want to hit, regardless of how much money you spend. This is my hands. I don't know why I'm doing that.
What should the Joe or Jill filmmaker who's brand new, who wants to know about a particular film festival do? Should they find out who some of the alumni are, find those filmmakers' websites, and then just shoot them a quick email? And what should that email say?
Newbie filmmakers can write to the filmmakers that have been to their festivals. Their best bet is to go to the festival's website, look at the kinds of films that have played at that festival, see if they're in the same species as their own movie. If they're all star vehicles that came out of Sundance, they're probably not going to play your little film. If they're all local Alabama films and you're not a local Alabama film, they're probably not going to play your film. If they play mostly foreign films, or they play social consciousness movies and your film's a horror movie, make sure you fit the program. Then yeah, if you want to know about it, and I've done this, is you write to filmmakers that have been at that festival. This is actually a good idea for anything. Talking to a distributor, talking to a film rep. Look on their website and see who's played their festival, who they represented, or who's been distributed by that distributor, whoever it is, and write to those filmmakers, because 9 times out of 10 they'll write back to you, and just say, hey, my name is Paul Osborne. I made this film called Favor. We're considering submitting to the Indie Memphis Film Festival. We saw that you played there last year. If you wouldn't mind letting us know whether it's worth our time. It looks like a good festival, but sometimes you can't tell from the website. What were your impressions? Was it good, bad? Don't do it through the festival or don't ask them, who can I talk to? Go to their website and write to them independently, because obviously you want to get a real answer. 9 times out of 10, and unless you're writing to the studio film that was there, the opening night studio film. If you're writing to a film that's around the same, again, in the same species as your movie, they'll probably write back to you, and they'll be honest, because filmmakers tend to like to help other filmmakers. I find it's much more of a brotherhood than maybe I think than maybe I think sometimes distributors wish it was. They wish we would fight it out, but I think I like to help other filmmakers,
So Paul, for Favor, how long did it take you to write the film, and how many drafts did you go through? What was your process like?
Let's see. With Favor, it didn't take long to write, actually. I had the idea. To back up to the beginning of it, when you're an indie filmmaker, you write for what you have access to. If you have access to a World War II tank, you write a film with a World War II tank in it. I had access to these 2 pretty great actors that I knew that I wanted to write something for, Blaine Weaver and Patrick Day. And I finally, at some point, got the brain flash that maybe they would work well together, and I could write something for both of them and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So I came up with the idea for the film pretty quickly. And then I remember I had drinks with Blaine Weaver at the Well in Hollywood, and I pitched him the idea, and just to see what he'd think. And he's like, yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, he was very off the cuff. Because when someone says, I'm going to write a screenplay for you, what do you think? Everybody, that's talk. It doesn't mean anything. But he liked the idea, or at least he seemed to. So that gave me the impetus to start writing it. And I wrote it over a course of a couple of months. It came together pretty quickly. My process is I come up with an idea, I get excited about it, and I tend to write it very quickly. I used to do outlines. I don't do outlines anymore, because unless it's very complicated, because I'll start writing the outline, and I think in so much detail off in the beginning that I'm often trying to write it fast enough before I forget what I'm thinking. So if I start writing an outline, by page 2, it's becoming scenes anyway. Like I keep like scene 1, I'm going to write one word. I'm just going to write one sentence for each scene, and scene 1's this, and scene 2 is this, and scene 3 is this, and scene 4 is this, and now I'm writing scenes. So I just start writing the script, and I try to write very quickly the first draft. I try to write 10 pages a day, trying to think about it too much, just puke it out, just blah. I also don't often write in order, so I try to write where I'm excited to write. I'm excited to write this scene, I'm going to just plow through that, and then write this, and then write this, and I kind of already know how it's all going to go together. And when I'm done, I have a first draft within less than 2 weeks. Then I step away from it for a couple of weeks and go back and look at it, and then it's either, it's either a lot of work to fix it or a little work to fix it. This one wasn't too bad. I mean, the story never really changed in the first draft. It was a question of kind of going through and making the dialogue not terrible. That was the big thing. So a month and a half of that, of rewriting it, and it was done. We didn't do a lot of changes once it went to the actors. I mean, I think I allowed them on set to, if the dialogue line doesn't feel right, or feels better to say it a different way, go ahead and say it a different way. As long as I still recognize the scene, or the talkback the other actor has doesn't screw that up, then I'm fine with it. So they were able to play a little bit loose with the dialogue, which was great, because then when they improve it, I get to take credit. But it came together pretty quickly. For this one in particular, some scripts I struggled with, like Tentolina I struggled with for months, but this one was pretty fast.
So do you ever struggle with that, where you're like, that sounds too written, that like somebody wouldn't really say that, they would just be like, instead of, well, I think you're wrong, and let me
I think I've gotten, that's something you obviously work on, is making sure that characters speak like characters, not like, don't speak perfectly. The subtext of a scene comes out. I've gotten pretty good with that in terms of, what the character says versus what the character means. The trick is making it not sound clumsy. Is like, and often it's a question of like sitting back and kind of speaking it in your head or speaking it out loud and making it, so what would it normally sound like? Not make it sound too perfectly written in terms of the sentence construction, make it sound more conversational, but also not clumsy or falling over a bad pun, or it's a question of just rewriting it. I haven't had too much trouble with people speaking perfectly for a while, fortunately. That was something I had to work on pretty early on in the career, because they just, here's what I mean, blah. It's super obvious.
Right. Well, it seems like a lot of stuff lately has become more like that, whereas we were talking about What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Right.
And sometimes you just see Johnny Depp, and he wouldn't even have to say a word. He just kind of raised an eyebrow, and it spoke volumes. And I don't know, I miss those movies. But
well, that's go back to Breaking Bad. That was one of the best things about that show, is that every scene's got 3 or 4 layers in it, and the characters are saying something. They mean like 3 different things, and what they're saying is so often not what they mean. I think it's great. I hope we accomplish that in Favor, because I feel like a lot of that movie is about these 2 guys who have been friends for a long time, and they're not really friends. They don't really have anything in common. They're friends more out of habit and the idea of being friends. Mm. It hasn't been tested. Like they both started in the same place when they were kids, and now one's here and one's here. They have really nothing else in common with each other, but they still call themselves friends, and there's been nothing really to test the connection. And when this favor is asked for, it all gets tested, and the pretense of their friendship slowly falls away. They slowly like, no, we're buddies. Do this favor, and it takes a good hour and a half of the film before it really just is like, we're not friends. So that was a lot of dancing around the subtext.
And so obviously you've got a very full life for yourself. Where are you doing this writing? Because I know sometimes at home it's so difficult. You've got kids, animals, phones.
The editing I do at home, and I have to carve out time for that. And usually it's out of my sleep. The writing, though, that's the beauty of the laptop. You can go anywhere. So if you're trying to write quickly and trying not to think too much, I do need a quiet space. I can't write at Starbucks. I can't do that whole LA thing. There's too much going on. But if I get hired to edit, and I have downtime in the editing room where it's just me. So it's just like I crack at that laptop and I can just shoot through it. Again, go fast. It's harder to find time to edit what I've written and reread it and rewrite it, because that requires more focus than just being in the moment and kind of shooting through it that way.
And some of these character ideas, are you watching people when you go to Starbucks? Is that the only reason to go to Starbucks? But where are you coming up with some of these ideas for these characters?
I think every writer carries around a locker, and they just stick ideas in there, and periodically they pull them out and redress them. And it's funny, like you do look back, and sometimes you don't realize where they're coming from. You go, oh yeah, I pulled that from this. But like there's things that you just kind of stick onto your mental, collage of your life. Like, pieces of conversation I have with my wife will go in there, and that'll end up in the script. Or, someone that I knew from high school, or a character here. So it's an emotion. A lot of favor. I'm of the perfect generation to really be befuddled by Facebook, by social media, because for most of my life, prior to social media, someone fell out of your life, they were out of your life. Like, if you didn't write them a letter, they were gone. Like high school, junior high, early in my career, college, a lot of people just fell out of the way. And then when Facebook came about, suddenly all the stages of your life were in the room at the same time. You have a former employer when you were 20, and a high school friend, and your daughter, and a current friend of yours, and your mom, all commenting on, your status update. And they're all talking to each other. And it's very strange to see, like, someone I knew in junior high, someone that I worked on a film when I was 25, and my kid, all commenting on a picture of my Christmas tree. It's just very strange. And you find yourself being approached by people that you didn't necessarily like way back then, or didn't have, or you did, but you have nothing in common with now, suddenly friending you on Facebook, and all of a sudden they're commenting on your feed, and not always positively, and strange. And there was a situation where there was a guy that I didn't really, we were friends in 7th grade, 8th grade forward, we didn't get along at all. Couldn't stand the guy. Didn't talk to him, didn't end well. Friends me on Facebook 20 years later, no hi, no hello, just, I get it. I'm like, oh God, okay, well, I guess I felt obliged to accept it. I don't know why, I did. And then he was completely acidic on everything I posted. He turned everything into a political thing. And, very right wing. And I'm left wing, but whatever. Like, we don't have to discuss politics on Facebook. It doesn't have to be, but he would turn everything into that. I have no idea. Like, picture my kid. I have no idea why. I got really sick of it. At one point, I got so angry, I was about to tell him off. And I'm like, why? Why am I doing this? I don't see this person. You don't live in the same state as me. We have no real world friends in common. We're not related. No work together. Like, why am I friends with this guy? Because we were both at the same starting line when I was 11. So I defriended him. And I didn't tell him. I didn't make a thing about it. I just literally defriended him. And it became this thing where, like, everybody from our high school was like, pro me or con me. And I was, where's this obligation coming from? This strange social obligation to maintain these expired friendships, these expired relationships. And so a lot of the emotional core of favor came from that experience, weirdly enough. Wow. I didn't necessarily intend it to be that way. It wasn't like I'd turned that into a story, but as I began to write this story, for me, that became a part of it, and it informed a lot of the characters and a lot of the subtext of the film.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard of other people going through that, where someone from their past will come out and they'll comment, and it's not necessarily, praising that person. Right. It's very odd. Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, there are people that came out of my past that
sure. Yeah.
I haven't talked to and thought about in years, and they're great. Like, oh wow, they're totally cool. People that I should have nothing in common with, but we get along. We have this common interest, and I go see them, and it's great. But it doesn't mean just because you did know somebody back then doesn't mean you necessarily need to be friends with them now. And Facebook has sort of created this social obligation,
absolutely,
to be friends with them just because you know them, regardless of whether or not you should be. And that's sort of what I was responding to. Even though Facebook there's no social media, computer, anything in the movie, but that emotion of obligation is what I drew from when I was writing a lot of favor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Wow. So we understand that favor has been acquired by Gravitas, is that right? Okay. Can you tell us about sort of who courted whom and...
I went after Gravitas, actually.
Oh, okay. The pursuer.
I did. Well, what's great about Gravitas and Film Buff, and I think Go Digital as well, is a bunch of them, they're distributors in name only, they're really aggregators. Although they're starting, as these companies grow, they are becoming more distributory. But what they do is they function as an intermediary between Hulu, iTunes, Netflix, pay-per-view cable companies, Showtime, basically companies where they don't want to deal with individual filmmakers. You have to go through a distributor. What they do is you get from dollar one all the revenue minus their distribution fee, which is great. They're not trying to recoup costs. They do have a clause to recoup costs, but it's capped very low. It's super reasonable. It's ridiculously low. It's like office costs, and that way you're guaranteed, at least as the film generates income, you're seeing something from the first transaction, which is very different than a traditional distributor where they may or may not give you an advance. And they're going to take everything until they recoup costs, and then you never see a dime. So I think Gravitas has a good reputation first of all, do your research. Go to your Apple TV or iTunes and go to the indie movies. And every Tuesday and every Friday when they post new trailers and post new movies, and see what's coming out. Look at the trailers, see who the companies are. That's what I did. And Gravitas was consistently present, and they had a nice wide range of stuff they were releasing: documentaries, foreign films, indies that were about the same size as Favor, indies that were a lot bigger than Favor. They had a good spread. And in dealing with them, they're very honest, very laid back, and they don't overpromise. That said, with a company like this, you are responsible for most of your advertising and publicity. They do some of it, but not very much. They do it as it pertains to the platforms they're on. They'll work with you on the trailer, they'll put the trailer on iTunes, they'll put the ads on iTunes, they'll fight for the best placement they can, but you're not going to see advertising, they're not going to place any advertising on comingsoon.net or anything like that. That will be up to you. So it is up to you to sort of run the charge, but it will be up to you anyway. Even with a distributor that's doing advertising, because unless you're working something with a big boy, they're going to do as little as possible as well. Gravitas, Film Buff, they're honest. We're not responsible for marketing or advertising. You are. We'll do some, but here's what we're going to do. But they've been really great to deal with, and they're really cool about your timetable, your schedule, the fact that you have to do delivery to them. You deliver elements to them and contracts, and you have to get E&O insurance and all those things. But they're really cool about how long it takes to get those things done, and they do find ways to get you the best prices for things, which is terrific. They make, for example, closed captioning. You have to get closed captioning. They have a closed captioning deal, so you can get really reasonable closed captioning done, and basically you just pay the fee and turn the movie over, and it's set up to take care of everything. You can get your own done, but I researched it. It's a lot more expensive. Use their guys, and you literally hand them over the movie. Dialogue list, everything's all taken care of, and it's delivered for you. And you own it. So if you go to DVD, which they only handle VOD and digital rights for us, if you go to DVD with a different company, you own that closed caption. You can take that element and apply it to your DVD or Blu-ray or foreign or whatever else you need to do. They're also really great about dealing with helping develop your trailer and just getting on the phone and just running past ideas. We're doing something called the April Favor Day campaign, because we're coming out on April 1st. And we had an idea about, and we're doing a whole promotion for it, and basically saying, we want you to try to, if you're going to rent our film or buy it on iTunes, can you do it on April 1st? Because we want to try to get onto the iTunes sales charts or rental charts. Because if we do, we're far more visible, and it really impacts the way the movie's perceived. It'll help us moving forward with Netflix, with Showtime. It'll, get us in front of a lot more eyeballs. It can snowball into the success we want the film to be just by that simple act of getting on iTunes. And so we ran that idea past them. Like, that's great. Well, we'll make sure we run your promo video. Make sure we do this. Make sure do it this way. Try this. And we're able to kind of refine the idea with them on the phone. It cost them, 10-minute phone call. And we're now kind of more empowered to do what we need to do. So they're sort of they're sort of cool. They're sort of cool. I like them.
So curious how you financed all three of your feature films. Were they different situations each time?
Okay. How did I find? Well, every feature film that I've done has gotten financed differently, because that's what you do when you get there. It's sort of like, there's no plan. If I was independently wealthy or had some sort of, whatever, there's no plan. It's what you do at the time. With 10 Till Noon, we raised money through traditional investors. We burned through a lot of favors, and we burned through all our money people. With Official Rejection, we ended up self-financing the whole movie. But a lot of that piggybacked 10 Till Noon. So we were able to do it pretty cheaply. We deferred a lot of money in that film. So we were able to do it that way. With Favor, we crowdfunded it, and that was the new thing to do, and that worked. So for the next one, I'm not sure what we're going to do. It's kind of like you can't kind of do the same thing twice. I mean,
why? I find that interesting.
With traditional distributors, we talk about it so much. With traditional investors, you sort of, they're going to lose money, probably. And if they make money, great. But if they do, it's in the long game. So until the film's made money, it's hard to go back to the same person and go, hey, by the way, another 10 grand? What do you think? Another 30 grand? It's very hard to do that because it takes a lot of years for a film to be profitable. So, in the rare case you get a hit, but and the thing is, we're friendly with them all. It's not like they're like, oh, where's our money? But they're not. You don't want to go back and try to tap them again. You want to go to the next round. So, that's why you kind of don't want to go to the same place twice until you can come back with really, really good news. Hey, we finally, have some profit for you. Self-financing is hard because you burn through your money, quickly, and it takes a while for that to build back up. And then with crowdfunding, I think it's the same thing. You go back to that well the second time, especially before the first one's out. I think it's hard. I think you can do it. Gary King's doing his third crowdfunding campaign. I think it's more successful if you do it in small bursts too. I know one guy, this filmmaker named Gorman, who does it. He's always got a campaign going, but they're only like $1,000, $2,000, and he's raised lots of money, but he just keeps feeding, and people kind of keep double dipping, triple dipping because it's so small. That's one way of doing it. But it's like you have to wait. It's like harvesting fruit. You gotta wait for the fruit to grow back. With the new film that we're putting together now, Small Hours, we're trying to go back to traditional investors again, but we're going to try to hit different ones, and we're going to try to go for more money this time. So that's sort of how that works. I think it's really dependent upon the film, the time it's being made, and what you have available to you at that time. You'll find a way. That's the way to go.
What are your thoughts on credit cards?
I think investing. I
suppose you have one that has no APR for like a year, and you're like, you know what? I'm pretty sure I can pay this off rapidly if I just put all this on it really quickly, and it'll be no problem.
I think working on credit cards is. I'm not going to advise that because that's really scary. That said, if I had a credit card that had no interest for a year, and I knew I could make that money back in a year with a reasonable amount of certainty, I might not do that. But I think it's always better to go with positive cash. I have done this. I have closed an IRA to fund a part of a film. I have done that. So it's like saying, the whole thing is you miss all the shots you don't take. Well, you also don't have all the films you don't make. Like, how long are you going to be dead? Like, here's your death. Here's forever. Well, I died with all this money. Yeah, but you could have made another film. Those films are made over here. They're not made here. So, and I think, as I get older, and it takes me 3 or 4 years to make a movie, I get very aware of time. How many more films do I have before I'm too old to lift the camera, or before I get mocked?
So you just sold all the Levitt's furniture stock, and you said,
yeah, you make it. But again, I think, like, I know these filmmakers out of New York, and they make a film every couple of years, and they made one on 16. They raised a lot of money, and they made one on Super 16 a few years ago. They made the next one for like 40 grand. They wanted to make another one. They didn't have access to money. They didn't have they hadn't gotten money from this yet. They hadn't gotten money this yet. They were in a place where they didn't have money. They didn't want to crowdfund. So they found a way to make a film for $1,000. They made a shot on a 5D, and one of them acted in it as the lead, and they got another actor they knew in New York to play the other lead. And they went back to their hometown, and they shot in their parents' restaurant. Their parents played her parents and these people that they knew, and they shot a crew of like a very small crew with lavaliers and a little mic pack and crew of 2, and they shot this thing for under $1,000. And it's a really good movie. I mean, it's a really well done movie. It's a very well acted film. They knew exactly where to bring in real actors and where to let people be themselves, using these locations that they could control. And they took the time, and they shot on, again, they used labs, used a zoom and a 5D, and the film looks and sounds great. It's a really good movie for $1,000. So I think you find a way to do it. It's really how it works. Maybe their next film they'll crowdfund it. Maybe their next film they'll do this. But you kind of have to, unless you have a reliable source of revenue or you have trust fund, you really have to kind of alternate how you raise money for movies, and you have to kind of pick the right way of raising money for that film, or pick the film based on the money you have access to at that time.
What if you have a filmmaking friend that says, you know what, my husband's mother-in-law is going to give us X amount of dollars? What's that conversation you would have? Is that right? Husband's mother-in-law? Yeah.
Someone you're not related to has access to...
Or a friend. Friend from college, did really well, got out before the whole .com crash, lives on an island, decides, you know what, I want to invest in indie film. I want to, not invest, but I want to help you make
I want to
film.
put money in indie movies.
Right. What's that talk you would have them have with that friend? A realistic
honestly,
talk.
it depends on the person you're talking to and what their friend sounds like. I've had conversations where someone goes, oh, I have someone who wants to put money in movies, but they're pro NRA, very political. So you have to make sure there's guns in the film in some positive way. That's sort of the Ed Wood conversation, you know. It's like, oh, the film was going to end with a big explosion, but the film ends with this. Not anymore. Also, I got a nephew, not a bright boy, but something tells me he'd be a hell of a... You have these constraints on it. Sort of the best way to preface the conversation, I think, is if someone knows someone who has access to money or knows people who have access to money, is to say to that person, okay, here's what I need. I need this much money. Here's the investment agreement or whatever it is. And you have these people. If you can get these people to come in and sign the line which is dotted and make this film a go film, I'll give you 10% of the budget as your fee, and I'll make you an executive producer. You'll be an executive producer, and when the cash hits our account and clears, the first check is going to be to you. So if we're raising $200,000, the first check is going to be to you for $20,000 for finding the money. And that's a good way of approaching it, because a lot of these deals are done through social means. I mean, film is not a smart financial investment. There's not a lot of return. You don't do it because it's going to make money. You do it because it's fun, because it's cool. You do it because you like movies. You do it because you like the people involved. You believe in the dream. You do it because you know that if no one had invested in Darren Aronofsky or Quentin Tarantino in the beginning, we wouldn't have Black Swan or Pulp Fiction. You do it for those reasons. So it involves being that politician again, and taking someone to dinner and buying them drinks and saying the right things and making sure you're fit. And I think there's only so much of a show you want to put on and so many compromises you want to make before it's silly. But if you have a buffer, someone who knows that person and gets along with them already, they're friends, having them have an incentive to get the deal done, to maybe take that dinner, one with you, one without you, and sort of be the social buffer and stay in the situation and help work it out, it's not a bad way to go. And it's not dishonest, because, you know, it is, you're being honest about what you want. We want this money. But this person's involved in the process and they can make a little coin off of it. It's not a bad way to go.
Going back to that theoretical dinner, let's suppose the buffer, the social buffer's gone. Mm-hmm. Now it's the filmmaker and the one with the checkbook.
Right.
What should that filmmaker do with good intention, with integrity, to make sure that they know, this person with the cash knows that they may never see it again?
Well, I think you have a moral obligation to make sure it's not the rent money or the mortgage money. You know, like, you don't want to be stealing. You're not stealing money from little old ladies that they can't, buy groceries. Make sure someone who has. I mean, that's always easy to suss out. Is make sure this is fun money for them, and they're not going to see it for a while. But I don't know. You necessarily need to bring that up. If they bring it up, of course, you say, hey, absolutely. But you always have an investment packet where you have all the information, and you kind of have that disclaimer in there and saying, you know what, there are better investments than indie film. If you want to, really invest your money well, put it in commercial real estate or invest in one ingredient in Xanax. There was a company called Galt. It was the largest private investment group in the world. It still may be the largest private, I don't know. But they fell in love with filmmaking for a while because they owned, again, like one ingredient in like these major prescriptions. So every time someone bought Xanax or whatever it was,
Valium or something, yeah.
Whatever, they would make a penny, and there were bazillions of them. So they were just making hand over fist money. Billions of dollars were coming in, and they found that they went to parties or bars and they say, "Yeah, I own 1% of Xanax." People go, "Oh, whatever, I own pharmaceutical ingredients." Well, who cares? Then they decided to get into filmmaking, into distribution actually. They opened up a label just because they felt it was a passive business. They could just pick up a movie for nothing and spit it out, blah, blah, blah. But then they started going to parties and saying, "Yeah, I distribute movies." "You distribute movies? Wow." And that became a much more attractive thing. So they kind of fell in love with it simply for that reason. I think it's what you always go back to is when they say, "Well, I'll make sure I get a return on my investment." You say, well, unfortunately, when you're investing in the arts, the financial investment can take time to happen, or may never happen, or may be partial. You can make the terms as favorable as you want in the deal. We have it so that you get 120% of your investment back before we see a dime. But you always say, is that really why you're investing? Bring it back to the fun. Bring it back to the fact that this is going to be an adventure. You get to go on set. You get to hang out at parties. You go to film festivals and all these things, and you get to be part of the fun. We have an exec producer on Favor who put in some money, and she knew she wasn't going to get it back, or it would be a long time. But she loved the script, and she loved Patrick, and she's been a huge advocate for us still, and involved. She's gotten very involved in the film, and she came down to the Q&As, and she started putting money into other films because she really just likes the dream. She's like, I'd rather be a patron of the arts and help get these films made and go see these things in front of audiences and just enjoy enabling artists than worrying about whether I get a return on my few $1,000s. It's not investing big sums of money, but I mean it's definitely helpful.
Sure.
So
let's talk about what frustrates you most about being an independent filmmaker. I know we want to keep it positive and that's all great and follow your bliss and everything, but let's talk about just the reality of what sometimes frustrates you. You're willing to work through it, I understand that, but
the most frustrating, the enemy of every independent filmmaker I know is time. Not money, time. There's not enough time to do everything, and now especially when filmmakers are responsible for researching film festivals and managing distribution, managing marketing, and doing all these things, and you have a life, and you maybe have kids, and you maybe have to make money doing a day job, and just having time to do everything is really the struggle. And that's where it gets frustrating because my eyes are definitely bigger than my stomach, And what really frustrates me actually is not just taking so long to get things done, but because things take so much time, they have to mean more. I mean, obviously I'm not a big filmmaker at all, but I'm in a place where because it takes so long to make a film, it's hard for me to find time to experiment. I would love to experiment with the form more. I'd love to try doing a film that's all based in improv, for example. I did a little improv on Favor, and I was absolutely amazed at how far I was able to get actors. This is one little part we improv'd. I gave them a situation, and they knew the characters, and not much else, and I was just blown away by what they were able to do with it. And I'm like, I could almost make an entire film like this. Come up with a structure. This is the way like Larry David works. Come up with a structure, scene by scene, work with the actors, get to know the characters, and then throw them in situations and shoot with 2 cameras and let them improv the scene 2 or 3 times, and almost cut it together like a doc. Let it be jagged and and I think, wow, it could be really interesting. You could go to places you wouldn't know, and performance stuff you could never really get to with something that's scripted because it's so unhinged potentially. I don't know that I would have time to do that just because it takes long to make a film. I've got so many scripts I want to do, and only so much life left to do them where I'm viable. But to do a film that's experimental and take a year, take 2 years, I don't know. I have that time, and that's really what's frustrating. Is you are kind of handcuffed. That's the thing you're the most limited on. Money, as limiting as it is there's less of a limitation than just hours in the day, days in the week, weeks in the month.
Yeah, I agree. What frustrates you about screenwriting?
Well, with screenwriting, I'm frustrated mostly about my own limitations. Every writer I think is in their own head, and you end up there's rabbit holes you always end up going down, the things that you're interested in that aren't very broad. And I wish I could think more broadly as a writer. I wish I was interested in more things, and I wish you don't often you look back at your work and you see what you're obsessed with, what ideas or what themes you tend to recur on. It's not intentional at all, and you're always stuck in the same loops. And I kind of wish I could break out of those more. But and the time thing, of course, always not enough time to spend writing. So,
Paul, what foolish mistakes do you see other independent filmmakers making that really bothers you? Maybe you bite your tongue, you don't say anything, but it tweaks you a little.
Oh, yeah. There's a few. One that really bothers me is when filmmakers go about things in a way that doesn't make sense anymore, like with distribution. A number of filmmakers I know have said, well, we need to get distribution, so we're going to hire a rep. And because there's not a lot of advances these days from distributors, reps who are supposed to work for percentage have started asking for retainers. $5,000, $10,000. Oh no, but it'll come out of my 10% at the end, which they'll never get that. They'll never get an advance. I take 10%, I want $10,000 up front, I'll give you a $100,000 advance. Never gonna happen. Never gonna get a $1,000 advance. So these filmmakers find themselves in a position where they feel like they have to find $5,000 or $10,000 to pay a rep to sell their film to distributors, when they probably could just do it themselves and save themselves $10,000, or put $10,000 toward, get an aggregator, which you can approach by yourself, and put $10,000 towards that, or put $10,000 towards anything else, put towards orthodontia or whatever. So they're suddenly looking for this money. So they'll go to Kickstarter and they'll crowdfund money for their rep, and like, we have to hire this rep. We need $5,000, and then we'll find distribution. And I'm thinking, how are you going to pay for your delivery costs, which are $5,000 to $10,000? And so they do this, and they're out there trying to find money this way, and I just like, it's so painful, because I'm like, you're asking all your friends and family that one favor for cash to pay the middleman who's screwing you. That frustrates me. And I've talked to a few people out of it that have told me they're going to do that. I'm like, just don't do that. A few people I know have done it, and they've already done it. They're already doing it. And I'm like, I can't really tell them that they're doing that. And and then do I contribute to their campaign? They're friends of mine. Do I throw money away? And, do I pay their middleman? It's very frustrating. That kind of thing is super frustrating,
And anything else? That's it.
That's the biggie that comes top. That comes off top of my mind. That's the big one. Another one, a thing that filmmakers do sometimes, is they say, well, we're going to go to a small festival first, and then work our way up to Sundance. And they don't realize that once your film is played, Sundance has, the whole thing, premiere status. Sundance wants the premieres. So you probably weren't going to get in anyway, but now that you've played at the Duluth Film Festival, you've actually eliminated, you're no longer qualified for Sundance.
Has anyone approached you and said, you know what, I just have to tell you this, and I see you doing X, and I think you should be doing it Y, and I'm only telling you this as a friend, regarding filmmaking, of course.
Right.
You don't have to tell me what it was about, but what was your response with that? Did you look at it and say, you know what, they're right? Did you realize I have another agenda with that?
It's only happened once. It was our film rep, Chris Pizzo, when we were doing 10 Till Noon. And he came and said, you guys are doing this the wrong way. It was about festival submissions. It was about premiere status. We had submitted to smaller festivals and bigger festivals, and we hadn't heard from the big festivals yet, and had started accepting small festivals, not realizing that if we played San Francisco Indie, South by Southwest wouldn't want us. And he was absolutely right. And if someone comes and says, hey, you should do that, listen to them. Listen to them, and if it makes sense, look at it, research it. If they're right, they're right. You change what you do. That's how you learn. Hopefully someone comes to you and if you are doing something, it could be doing something better, doing something wrong, and they come to you and say, maybe do it this way, and you learn. Thank God they did. Thank God they came to you and said that. I haven't heard anybody come up to me and say, you should do it this way, and it's totally not the way I would do it, unless they're trying to sell me something. I have had a film rep come up to me and say, you should sign with me. What are you doing? You can make you millions of dollars. I'm like, no, you can't. No, show me your other films that you've done that. But to me, I think it's pretty obvious when someone's selling you something, and when someone actually is an expert in the field, knows something you don't, and is correcting you. thank God for that course correction. You know, I learned a lot for that, and it's made a difference moving forward. So, yeah.